Hi, Chad Howland with Versamatic. Today we're going to show you how to install a wet end kit into our E4 metallic clamp pump. Out front we have examples of our air end kit and our wet end kit for our E4 metallic clamp pump. The rebuild you're going to see is accurate in man, method, and machine, but for video purposes some parts of the work performed have been condensed in time. At any point during the presentation, please pause this video until you have completed any part of the process. The pump we are using in this presentation has been built new and is considerably easier to work with than a pump that has been used in a process. Additional time may be required in the preparation and separation of parts and components during the rebuild. Identifying which kit is required for your repair has become easier on newer pumps, with the permanently affixed metal serial number tag that now indicates the wet end and air end kit information for the pump. Kit information can also be found in the service and operating manual. Versamatic genuine replacement parts wet end and air end kits provide a bill of material of the components included in the kit. All items included in the kits are components that Versamatic recommends replacing when rebuilding a pump. The pump we are using today is an example of the ease of kit installation. Always consult your respective service and operating manual before performing any maintenance on your pump. Service and operating manuals include composite repair parts drawings, repair parts list, and torque specifications. Today our wet side rebuild will include diaphragms, check balls, and seats. These are the recommended tools used with the rebuild. While the sizes may change based on the model, the type will remain the same. Torque wrench, ratchet, small slotted screwdriver, O-ring pick, snap ring pliers, 12-inch pry bars, sockets and or wrenches, 9/16 inch, 11/16 inch, 1 5/16 inch 6-point socket, 5/32 inch socket head Allen wrench. Let's get started. Today we're going to use a 3/8 drive impact gun for ease of assembly and disassembly. First, let's start off by removing the discharge manifold. Remove the discharge manifold and set aside for later reassembly. Remove the valve seats and check balls and discard. Now we're going to remove our main air valve assembly. Once you remove the main air valve assembly, go ahead and set aside for later rebuild. Now remove the suction manifold. Go ahead and set the center section of the pump aside and remove the check balls and valve seats on the suction side and discard. Now remove one clamp band assembly. To remove the outer chamber, set one outer chamber aside, remove the clamp assemblies, and remove the opposite outer chamber so we can remove both diaphragm assemblies. You may get one diaphragm assembly and one diaphragm assembly to the rod. Go ahead and set aside for later rebuild. Now we're ready to remove the old diaphragm assembly from the rod. Versamatic shafts have wrench flats on the rod to assist in diaphragm removal and installation when performing maintenance in the field. Today we will use a vise with soft jaws. Soft jaws are utilized to ensure that the shaft is not scarred, scratched, or damaged while the shaft is clamped in the vise. Once you have the diaphragm assembly removed, go ahead and set aside. Inspect the main shaft for any scarring or scratching or damage and replace as needed. Inspect the outer diaphragm plate radius for any sharp edges. Address the sharp edges with a light sandpaper. You can also do this with the inner diaphragm plate. Now we're ready to install our wet end kit. Note the orientation of the diaphragm of natural bulge in. Install our outer diaphragm plate and our inner diaphragm plate with the radiuses of both plates facing towards the diaphragm. Be sure to torque the diaphragm assembly to the recommended torque spec in the service manual. Now apply light grease to the main shaft to ensure we don't damage the main shaft O-ring upon reassembly. Now install our opposite diaphragm assembly, again with natural bulge in. Make sure the inner and outer plates radius are facing towards the diaphragm. Now we're ready to torque our diaphragm assemblies to the main shaft by holding one side and torquing the opposite side. Be sure to torque the diaphragm assemblies to the recommended torque specification listed in the service manual. Now inspect our outer chambers. Inspect the radius that the diaphragm rolls across for any sharp edges. You can address those sharp edges with a light sandpaper, crocus cloth, emery cloth, or replace as needed. We're going to inspect the integrity of the casting. Inspect the machine surfaces on the suction side and discharge side, and inspect the ball guides for any sharp edges and address as needed. Note the orientation of the outer chamber. The discharge side aligns with the main air valve assembly. Now we're ready to install our clamp band assembly, clamping our outer chamber and inner chamber together. When installing clamp bands, go ahead and push on, but you may need a rubber mallet to tap on to fully seat the clamp band. Once you get the clamp band assembly fully seated, go ahead and install the bolts. Loosely tighten the clamp bands, as we still need to realign the outer chambers before putting on the manifolds. Again, we want to inspect our opposite outer chamber radius that the diaphragm rolls across for any sharp edges and address as needed with a light sandpaper, crocus cloth, or emery cloth. Inspect the integrity of the casting, the machine surfaces, and also note the orientation of the outer chamber in relation to the center block of the pump. The discharge will go towards the main air valve assembly. Now we're going to install our opposite clamp band. Again, you may need a rubber mallet to tap on the clamp band assembly. Be sure to fully seat the clamp band assembly. Once you fully seat the clamp band assembly, go ahead and install the bolts. Once you get both clamps installed loosely, you may need to align the outer chambers in relation to the center of the pump. When you tighten the clamp band assemblies, there is no torque spec, but tighten them evenly. Now we're ready to install our suction manifold. Inspect the integrity of the casting. Now we're ready to install our valve seat and check ball. We have the O-ring that's built into the check valve. We have part numbers in the flat surface on the opposite side. The flat surface will go towards the check ball and the O-ring faces down. Repeat this process for the opposite valve seat. Now install our center section over top of the suction manifold. Begin to install our clamp band assemblies. Be sure to fully seat the clamp band assembly around the outer chamber and suction manifold. Again, there's no torque spec for the clamp bands themselves, but to tighten them evenly, now ready to install our main air valve assembly to the center block of the pump. Be sure to align all the bolt holes of the main air valve gasket with the main air valve body and the pilot porting holes. Note the orientation of the main air valve assembly in relation to the
center section of the pump. Tighten the main air valve assembly to the center block of the pump. Now we're ready to install our discharge valve seats and check balls. Note the orientation of the valve seat. The O-ring of the check valve seat will face down and the flat surface of the check valve seat will go towards the ball. Inspect the integrity of the casting of our discharge manifold. Inspect the machine surfaces and the ball guides for any sharp edges and address those sharp edges if need be with a light sandpaper or crocus cloth or emery cloth. If too far gone or worn, replace as needed. Now install our clamp band assemblies over top of the outer chamber flange and discharge flange. Again, there's no torque spec for the clamp band assembly, but to tighten evenly.